Ready to get going? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We're going to get this meeting of the Finance Committee started. Today is Monday, May 30th. Welcome, everyone. We'll begin with public comment. Do we have any public comment? We're checking. No public comment. Okay, very good. We'll move on to our business items, and we're going to begin with an overview of the state budget proposals. So it was just maybe 2 months ago that Ms. Cribbs walked through the governor's proposal in regards to the school aid fund. And since then, we've received both the House and the Senate budgets, and we're going to see a side-by-side comparison of those as we look forward to the finalized budget from the state.
Okay, we have a very full agenda tonight, so I am going to try to move a little quickly. But if you've got questions, stop me and we'll slow down. But if not, we're going to move a little quickly. So as Ms. Shockey mentioned, now we have the 3 budget proposals. We've got the governor, the House, and the Senate. Of these, the foundation allowance is the one that you hear the most. So they range from 4% from the House to 6% from the Senate, with the governor's being at a 5% increase. Right now, as I've done our 23-24 budget, I'm using the governor's proposal. That was the one that we had first, and it's in the middle. So as the House and the governor and the Senate continue to negotiate what that looks like, it may not be in time for us to revise our 23-24 budget. So kind of going the middle of the road. But I did hear they're expecting to have that finished by mid to late June. So special ed funding, in the earlier presentation we spent a longer description on this complicated formula, so I'm not going to go through it in detail again. We've got 3 similar proposals. The percentages change slightly. One area that I have heard is that this is an area of interest for all 3 parties. So this may be one where we get additional funding on it. So at-risk funding is, again, the governor's proposal is similar to the funding formula that we have now, with a 5% increase. The House is targeting a significant increase in the percentage available for that. The Senate has a slightly different, they've changed the formula and what it would look like. So their allocation method now incorporates an opportunity index score, which would then change the percentage of the targeted foundation allowance from 11.5%, that is, everybody gets that now, to 15.3%. Given our higher percentage of poverty in the district, we would likely tend towards the higher percentage there. Bilingual funding, again, all 3 proposals have increases. Not vastly different in the dollar amounts that are there. Great Start Readiness, increases on all 3 that mirror the increases in the foundation allowance. And that's our preschool program.
You go back one.
Yep.
Just a quick question for you. So seeing that these are 3 different ones that you're comparison, when they're all off for each other, what does that translate? What does that mean for us as a governing body?
The 3 entities, the governor, the Senate, and the House, have to get together and negotiate and then decide which one they are going to go with. Okay. And then it comes back. So there's some of them that you'll see where 2 of the 3 are actually agree. But as they get into their negotiations, they can decide to do anything. So it may be something totally different than any of these 3 proposals as they negotiate what it looks like. So it's kind of informational.
Exactly, and you start to see themes of priorities. So we can safely estimate, right, that there's going to be an increase in per pupil funding, which has not been something historically that we've seen year over year. So it gives the district what they need to do educated budgeting, truly, about what may be coming, and also to be able to see the priorities of our government as it relates to public ed. Yeah, but this isn't the final, so yeah, this is negotiated now.
Okay.
Yep.
Mental health, and this is where you see the governor and the House agreed on what that should look like, and it's similar to what we are getting in this year, which would be, equates to about $1.6 million for GRPS. The Senate took a little different tact on it and have about the same dollar amount, but it's 1 year, and they included the student safety amount, which is a separate allocation this year. Which the next one is the school safety grant, so this is where you see the House and the governor agree, and it's about the same dollar amount. Our allocation is about $1.6 million, but this is where the Senate repealed this section. So not quite sure where they're going on it. I think it's a priority for all three, but what it looks like when they finally get done, I'm not sure. This is one that is in all three. Dollar amounts vary, but what I have heard through Chris Glass and some of the others is that this is not a whole lot of interest in. So even though there's some bigger dollars here, it may be one that doesn't, as they negotiate through and find some other priorities, whether it's looking at a different way to fund special ed or at risk, those might be higher priorities. So this might be where some of those dollars get shifted to a higher priority. It was one that was going to require 100% funding match. So I don't know what they were going to allow us to use as a funding match. So it might be interesting to see the funding go to some of our special ed or at-risk funding. And this is another categorical. It was significant dollars in there for professional development. And that's a lot of money to spend on professional development, even statewide. And so we're hearing this one doesn't have as much interest in at the statewide level. So it might be another one where that funding gets moved to one of their other priority buckets. Some money still in there for another school mental health and support services. So they're pretty consistent. So this might be one that doesn't change as much. But the Senate did have some little bit of details were varying. Revenue consensus, that's where the state budget office, the House fiscal agency, and the Senate fiscal agency all get together. They hear forecasts from different economists and projections of what our economy is going to look like. They put out some information on what that looks like. Just took a couple items there. Didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, but one thing you'll see, statewide, they're still projecting pupil membership to decline. So it's not a GRPS thing, it's a statewide. If you look, public school academies have very slight increases, but local school districts like GRPS are projected to decline over the 3 years where they are projecting. On the state's funds that they do the revenue consensus on, school aid fund revenue continues to be very strong. There are increases even from the January revenue consensus. But however, the state of Michigan general fund has actually decreased in all 3 years. That's primarily due to the tax changes that have been implemented. Most notably, the one you've probably heard about is the rollback of the personal income tax from 4.25% to 4.05%. So that has impact on what the state will see going into their general fund. So long story short, they still have significant fund balances available to fund whatever school aid may look like. In past years, it was not nearly this strong. There's still over $1 billion available. So we'll see what they actually come up with. A lot of it, I just want to say, though, is still one-time money. So we want them to be a little cautious about how they are building what school aid looks like, because a lot of it is still one-time money. So that is a very quick overview of the 3 budget proposals. We'll see what they come up with in the next couple weeks.
Yes. The goal being before they leave for summer break, right? For
Yes.
budget, yes, great.
We have a very, can I just move to
Please,
purchasing
by all means, yeah,
agenda?
thank you. Unless there's
okay.
any questions about the proposal.
Okay.
Great.
So purchasing agenda. Again, we've got a very long purchasing agenda. So I'm not going to go through it like I typically do and go line by line. I know Mr. Rodriguez sent some questions earlier today, so I'm going to try to address a few of those. Some of those we will still have to circle back to you on answers as we work through this. The first one I'm going to highlight is the auditorium lighting and for Union High School. That's an auditorium that has been offline due to some facility type issues, so we're trying to get that one back up and functioning. So I have a purchase there for auditorium lighting and control equipment. The next one I'm going to highlight down is under the support materials for the blanket order for legal services. We use Miller Johnson for employment law primarily and benefits. When I asked for specifics, we've got some additional work, and I'm not sure which attorney firm it's coming through, but was the question on Miller Johnson though, that we've had additional EEOC and MDCER, and I think, and I'm taxing my memory, EEOC is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and MDCR with Michigan Department of Civil Rights employee situations arise, so we're using outside counsel on those. We've also had some additional Title IX situations where we're using outside counsel on. I'm gonna see if I can. See how it goes. There it goes. So what I want to highlight, just because it's a large number up there, is the Middle Cities Risk Management Trust. They are who we get our property and casualty and liability insurance through. So that is our insurance for next year. A lot of these will be renewals of like existing software programs that we're using. So you get the licensing for next year. And again, more renewals and firewall equipment. Down, we've got under number 13, we've got the professional services to train teachers for the Read 180 and Math 180 programs. Those are programs that we've used for a number of years, but we have a number of new teachers and want to make sure that we're getting everybody trained so we can effectively use this.
For these renewals, particularly what I'm looking at on number 8 under other, when I keep seeing renewal, are these using ESSER funds? Are these also, what is the time period of this? I'm assuming this would not be annual due to the fact that we're not getting ESSER funds after the third round. So like, is this a 2-year period? Is it a 3-year period? What is the renewal timeline?
1 year. So these are renewals for next year. If it's something we're going to decide to continue, they will come back and be regular base funding and charges. So that's one of those where with our ESSER funding, we've moved some things over and are charging things that would typically be out of our general operating fund into the ESSER grant to free up funds, so we're able to do some of the, for example, the HVAC projects that we're doing this year at the 3 buildings.
So we will have, like, in particular where I'm seeing that there is like professional development for leadership, that will be something that will be annually maintained, or is that saying we're doing it this year and good luck for next year? Like, what is the?
It depends on which item it is. And there's some of these things, like the leadership development, that's the work that we're doing with Dr. Campbell. So at the end of this year, or at the end of 23, 24, if that work is not complete, we'll need to look for a new funding source. Potentially it could come out of one of our other grant fundings. There may be other grants that we could ask for additional funding. We may decide to do it, but at a reduced scope. But like the Seesaw Learning and Vivi, those are likely ones that we will continue and will need to bring back into general operating.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next one, and I think I'm going to ask Jonathan Harper to come up to talk about, is this number 15. It's a 3-year professional development program that we're looking at with the University of Michigan for Teaching Works to support our math teachers and have him discuss. I know, Mr. Rodriguez, this is an area that you'd ask, and Mr. Harper sent me a long email. I will forward that after the meeting to you as well with additional resources that you can look at about what outcomes have been in other districts, but I'll let him describe it a little bit further.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jonathan Harper. Thank you, Rhonda. So yeah, the Teaching Works, so we did present this proposal to Academic Achievement Committee in the last meeting. And this is the dollar amount associated with the 3-year teaching proposal. I do know there are some questions around efficacy or impact. A couple of things, and as Rhonda mentioned, I did put together a rather long email, but one of the things I want to highlight is the core instructional practices that are lifted up from Teaching Works are actually the core instructional teaching practices that MDE has identified, and they actually cite Teaching Works for that as being the practices that all Michigan educators need to be trained in, so that's even going into pre-service teaching. And so what we're trying to do is leverage that tool and expertise. Dr. Deborah Ball leads that work out of the University of Michigan. Is recognized nationally for frankly internationally, but across at least the United States in that work. So this is really anchored in those instructional practices. And just an overview of this. So the plan is we have a component of specific training for our building leadership because the leadership moves and capacities of building leaders and to be able to lead the work is slightly different. It's a different lens than being a classroom practitioner. So we have building leader specific training that's part of this work. There's also a K through 12 mathematics cohort, so specifically instructional practices related to high quality mathematics instruction. And then for 6th through 12th grade, there's the literacy component, which is a disciplinary literacy, cross-content literacy. So not just our English language arts teachers, but emphasizing that these high-quality instructional practices are really for every content area teacher. And so we want to build that capacity across the board to see evidence of those instructional practices in our classrooms. But that's kind of in a nutshell what the proposal is covering. And that 6 through 12 work through Teaching Works we have the elementary component of letters. That's a different program that we've talked about before. But yeah, really looking at a comprehensive K through 12 focus on mathematics and literacy instruction.
How many teachers and administrators will have access to this?
So the admin training would be for all building administrators, okay? And then the cohort, we were looking at representation across the entire district and approximately 2 to 3 teachers from each building, depending on the cohort. So for instance, if you're thinking about, you would have a set of elementary mathematics teachers, right? And then you'd have a group of secondary mathematics teachers, and you'd have a group of secondary literacy teachers from across content areas. So we would have representatives in each one of those groups from every building, with the higher focus on our CSI partnership schools. So we ensure that we would have more staff, if not all staff, trained in those buildings.
So would this be a continuation of all through? So would that cohort be the same cohort year 1, 2, 3, or is it every year there's a new cohort that's able to?
The idea that we would continue to build. Right, so that cohort will continue to work, right, years 1 through 3, but we also want to build out, bring new people on each year as well, if that makes sense.
So essentially in year 3, you will have 3, 6, 9 people from each school, essentially.
In theory, yeah, based on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So this professional development, would it take place like during PLCs for
Yeah.
the teachers? Would it be a PD day type learning?
That's
or?
a great question, and we know one of the things that we're trying to limit is the amount of time outside of contract hours for teachers to engage in training. So we have on the calendar that we've co-constructed with the Teaching Works team, we're leveraging any of the identified professional learning days across the GRPS calendar, as well as there's some flex time calendar days that we will offer training on. Those sessions will be offered on those days as well. And there are also some self-paced modules, as well as some what they call video, like, I'm losing the word. It's like a video conference, PLC, where they look at some classroom video and then talk about what they see, and that would be done virtually. So any of the time that the teachers that participate in this program, if they're not part of regular contract hours, then there's a stipend associated, so teachers do get paid extra time. But as a general rule, any of the in-person PD is scheduled on days that are already dedicated for professional learning in the district.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we don't want to pull people out of classrooms.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Yep.
There are a few items on here, and I did see Mr. Johnson on security, if we want to have some additional information on those, but the critical incident and mapping and active threat plans was a specific Section 97 grant, and the dollar amount is the $211,800. We had to apply specifically for that grant with the state. The physical assessment, the secure education consultants, they're going to come in and do a physical assessment of each of our educational buildings. That's the one last week when we were at the security forum and we had the consultant there. That's the consultant there. That's the specific dollar amount. We had to list each of our buildings and got that dollar amount for that grant. There's a I'm losing it. I think those were the bigger security ones.
What was the total amount of that grant?
Those two, one is 97C and one is 97D. Those two dollar amounts are those. But we do have the school safety per pupil grant, which is about $1.6 million. So what we were listening for as a staff that were there were things coming out of that safety forum. It does require community input of how we're spending that $1.6 million. So we had this one on May 20th, looking to do a second session towards the end of June to get more community input. Looking also to get some things on there. I see that now. The Moss Telecommunications, we're looking to get some additional cameras into a couple of those buildings where we have a challenge with the secure entryway. Cameras, are helpful, but not the, one thing that we can install there. So that's part of using that money. We've also got this open gate system, which is something we'd like to pilot and look and get some units here that are different type of metal detectors than we've currently got. So if we've got detailed questions, we'll have to ask Mr. Johnson to come down, because that's about the extent of where I feel comfortable talking about it.
So not the per pupil grant. How much was the total of the grant that was mentioned at the forum? What was that total that we received?
The assessment grant was $112,000.
Okay.
And then the critical incident mapping, that grant is $211,800.
So are these not then part of so would B5 and B9 then fall under that $1.6 million
Yes.
safety funding?
Yes.
Why does it say it's Section 97 security grant if they're
It's-
two different funding sources?
They're all Section 97, so we've got
But one is grant money?
97. Yeah, 97 is the 1.6 million, And then 97C, I think, is the item number 4, and I think 97D is the critical incident mapping. And I may have C and D mixed up, but. So they're all section 97. They're just different grants out of section 97.
That's okay.
Um,
The wording of this is very interesting for me. So, like, what I'm trying to piece together is, which I'm assuming my question is simple, so maybe it's perhaps how I'm asking it, which is, it can happen. This is the best Tuesday, Monday I've ever experienced this week. But I'm so beyond the 1.6 million that's coming out of the pupil grant. The piece that brought the guy to speak on that 20th. That's in addition to the 1.6. So what was that piece? Not the 1.6, but the addition, his addition that he's bringing.
112,000.
That's by itself. That's it. The total of that
For
was
that work specifically. So that's either C or D, correct?
Yep.
One of the two.
And that's money that you have to apply for specifically for these things?
Yep. We
Okay.
applied specifically last fall for it. They didn't let us know until I think it was about March that we were gonna, of what the award amount was gonna
So
be.
for both of those, both this 112 and the 1.6, both require community input on how both of those piles of dollars will be spent. I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly before I continue.
The number 3 and the number 4 don't require community input. Those were specific to those specific purposes. The 1.6 million straight section 97 does require community input. So that's part of what we're trying to see. We're trying to get a couple things that we think are a little bit higher priorities moving now. Like I said, we want to do a pilot on some additional different types of metal detectors than we currently got. So we borrowed some from Kentwood to do graduations. So we want to get something similar so we could have some in our own system. But don't want to go out and buy like 50 of them. So we want to figure out how it works for GRPS and what does it make
So
sense.
approving these things that's on this consent agenda today will go towards the purchasing of some of those items that you're just speaking of,
Yep.
correct?
But we still
Prior
have
to their community opinion.
well, we've gotten some community input, but that's where they're, what is it? We've got 114 and where's the other one?
The last one, 70,000
Yeah.
open
So
gate.
about 200,000 we're looking to spend soon. And then we'd have the 1.4 million that would still be looking for developing a plan of what that may look like.
Okay.
I have a question about still, again, B3 and 4. So if it's very specific grant money going towards these very specific vendors, I guess what is the, why does it come to the board? I'm still trying to learn the
It's-
process of,
I was gonna say, it's over the thresholds
Yeah,
of
of the
dollar amount.
the,
dollar amount.
Right, so it's the policy of the district to receive approval, and I don't remember the threshold amount off the top of my head, but that's why they all come to the board, even though some of these are, right, decisions of operations about how they're going to.
that have already kind of been spoken for.
Yeah, and it's,
Sure.
that dollar amount changes every year, and it's currently a little bit over 28,000. And it gets into weird dollar amounts. So sure, I want to say it's like $28,006 or something.
Does MDE set that
Yes.
threshold? Yeah.
And they just up it by a percentage every year, so that's where you get into unusual dollar amounts. I usually get to the nearest thousand in my head to keep like, anything over 28,000 needs to come to the board. And that typically changes in September, so.
So I guess I don't know if this is the time, perhaps,
Sure,
but I guess
yeah.
my question would be, these past few weeks, right, we've heard very highly from community as far as what their expectations are and actually being involved in this process. And so for me, I am also about that checks and balances. And so if there's an aspect of this approving of these today speaks to equipment that we're going to be purchasing, which I'm not against the equipment. I'm more so wondering if we receive feedback, what has that feedback been for us to say yes to something of spending money towards equipment? Not saying it's not necessary, but I want to make sure that there's an aspect that like, okay, this is what was required. This was what was requested of from community or from that input that we're saying we are getting from community. If we've gotten that, where is that? Because that's to me, that helps me inform the yes or the no, because that is something that is being requested based off of what we've previously engaged with community on.
I think item number 5 and then the open gate systems we clearly heard from the community during the open session that they wanted to look at secured entryways, and there was a couple buildings that we could not achieve a secured entryway. We thought the best way to handle that was to add cameras in those buildings that did not have the cameras. The open gate, we currently have some metal detectors, walk-through metal detectors called Fisher. The open gate, in listening to our parents about the time that it took kids to get through the metal detectors, the intrusive look of the metal detectors, we wanted to utilize the open gate as a pilot program to see if we can get kids through faster and if they don't look as intrusive when they come through the metal detectors.
Those are the ones that are outside of Hausman.
Those are, you probably didn't see them because they're up
Side?
top. They're up top. The ones that you saw were the Fishers. The ones that were up top that were letting our fans in, got our community in a lot faster, and were very effective as we saw during that graduation. And so that's why we wanted to try those before we made a huge investment in the open gate. We wanted to make sure that we had a system that, number one, that was working, and number two, that our community would approve of as we move forward.
So the majority of those people, because I think I missed the first maybe 30 minutes. So the majority of the people that we're speaking of were teachers, right? That were talking about those safety concerns. And so you're saying that was the information that we took in regards to utilizing what these purchases would be going to.
Yes, we were already headed down that pathway, but with that additional information from that community input session, we thought it would be prudent to at least get ourselves in line to acquire some of these devices, as well as work with some of our providers to get ready to do cameras, because we know the lag time of getting cameras. The other advantage of doing the cameras, particularly at Congress and to Montessori building, is the fact that they're going through a major HVAC project where the walls will be open. And so we don't have to intrude that system but one time by drilling into those walls, but one time, and pull our wires simultaneously when the other wires are being pulled for technology.
How many systems would we be able to purchase at 70K?
I think that's 4 systems.
4.
Yep.
And then I also had a question on B5. So I totally see where you're coming from with the Montessori and Congress, but what about the facilities and operations building, adding cameras for that?
That is a replacement of cameras right now. As you know, as you may not know, we've had a brand new truck stolen out of that lot. And so we're trying to do is secure our assets better out there by expanding the camera coverage in that particular lot. We also know that an intrusion of the buses out there could stop our young people from getting transported to school. So we need to expand that system and improve on the visuals of that system so that we can deter individuals from tampering with or removing vehicles out of that lot.
Any other questions for Mr. Johnson?
No, thank you for that. That's just, I'm going to publicly say thank you for explaining that, because that's the one thing I think that we kind of all left with hearing and want to be responsive to, our community as a whole. You're a part of that community as well. So the trust goes both ways. So thank you for letting us know that you took some of that feedback that was in this first session and put something into place.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So that's all that I was going to go through on the purchasing agenda.
Any questions on any item that wasn't addressed?
No, the only comment is to tell you thank you for listening when we asked to not have something that just says blanket order without details of blanket orders, because I'm telling you today I would have told you no to almost everything that would have had blanket order as a result, because that request was clear. And so I appreciate you actually adding additional details to kind of allow the development of thought around what any particular topic that is presented here. So thank you for doing that.
We're trying.
Ditto on everything Mr. Ebman said. And I think my emails also kind of ask questions like, okay, like what is the desired outcome for this, or what is the intention behind this purchase? So no, I absolutely appreciate you having other folks here that can answer these questions for us.
And we'll try to continue to do that, especially on the large and more complex items, to have the experts weigh in.
So this is just out of curiosity, because I know this happened last time, but I don't remember ever hearing about the process of this correction. It just popped in my head as I was looking at ESSER. So do you recall the last time we talked about how you had to go back and amend some of the ESSER requests because some of the regulations around it may have changed from what originally was posted or submitted and approved versus what actually came through as approval months later throughout that process? When that occurs, are we informed as a board about what those switches were? If we approved or voted on something that went towards a particular something that ESSER is going to and a change happens, how are we then informed about that change?
I was going to say, some of it as we've gone along, it's been at finance, we've brought it up different times. One thing Ms. Shecky and I have talked about is doing an ESSER update at the June Finance Committee. So
Got
there'll
it.
be a presentation there where we'll kind of walk you through where we're sitting on ESSER 2 and then ESSER 3.
She's amazing. She put that from my head, so thank you.
It was going to be at this meeting, but we kind of juggled.
Yeah, we
so.
had too much on this agenda. I would have come to you sooner. Absolutely.
Thank you. No, that's
Yes.
good. So I'll wait. We can
Great.
move on.
Okay.
Sorry, one more note, just on the idea of having, community input, and I think this is something we spoke about the last meeting. So I love to hear that we're gonna, for that 1.6 million, we're gonna have more community input. Again, I just hope that, after this budget, obviously we came in pretty, late in the game, but I hope that we can have more community input on the general budget, and what we, prioritize in our spending. I really hope that, my board colleagues want to do that work as well, because I think that that's something that really matters, and I think that it helps, to have communities buy into the work that we're doing and to the mission that GRPS has. So I just wanted to mention that.
All right, well then I will be looking for a motion to move the purchasing agenda forward to the board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. We'll move on to our blanket purchase orders. Get to see them in their entirety, what you've been waiting for.
That's what I was going
great.
to say, and Mr. Eatman is looking at this great big long list. And this one, we don't get into as many details, but a lot of the items are to somewhat, Action Chemical, those are custodial supplies. And again, this is multiple pages, so I'm not going to spend a long time on it. It's typically items where we're going to get maybe a monthly invoice or something similar to that, where we don't want to come back to you every month with a purchasing agenda item. So we try to get our best estimate of what we think we're going to spend with these individual vendors throughout the year. These dollar amounts are then incorporated into our budget, but there's, for example, the Action Chemical, we have a custodial supply line in the budget. That's just going to get encumbered against that account number for those custodial supplies. It's not in addition to their budget, it's just, this is earmarking for a specific vendor for these types of things. On there, just a note that's a little bit confusing. We did update the proposed budget amounts as we've brought amendments to the 22-23 blanket purchase orders. So those have been updated pretty current, even to ones that we brought through April Finance. But the amount spent is as of a point in time, and I want to say that was in February. So there's a couple things where it looks like we've had
Surplus.
less spending on it. Some of that's due to timing, where invoices have been coming in and what that looks like. One of those is like the Catholic Diocese of Grand Rapids, the 225,000. We were actually late in getting payments to them. We are supposed to make 3 payments during the year. We were late on the first 2. So that's where it shows like we've had 0, but we'll spend that full 225,000 for the transportation with the diocese. Don't have a lot of other specific things on this one. One that's large that just is jumping out at me. For Kent Intermediate School District, they contract with Dean for special ed transportation, so that's where we're looking at the 7.5 million for there. They also are dual employers for our special ed itinerant staff, so that's $14 million. So that's where you would see a larger dollar amount, and we just ask for our best estimate of what that looks like. Another large dollar amount is the Michigan School Energy. That's our electricity for the year for the district.
So, sorry, one page behind. So for the Kent Intermediate School District, what was it? Oh, so one question that I had asked in my email was just about, and maybe you did answer this, about the discrepancy between the proposed budget from this school year versus spending, and then why there would be a proposed budget increase. So would you say that most of those are just because these the spending column isn't updated?
That's what I was going to say. That would be my guess, is the spending column isn't current to what expenses are likely going to be. Some places we like to be a little conservative anyway, and would, if trend is increasing, we might have actually increased what they ask for next year, just knowing some things
So
are
likely to be
generally
an
costing
increase.
us more.
Yes,
So
right.
rather than to have to bring you a mid-year adjustment, we're just like, things are trending up. We're just gonna try to maybe ask a little bit on the high side, but still a realistic side. I say one that's on there, and I think it's on our current purchasing agenda, is some of the translation services. We've had to ask for increases during the year, so those are ones we're likely estimating a little bit higher going into next year.
Give you a minute. I know it's the first time you've seen the entirety of the blanket order. So any other
Well,
specific questions?
I did have another question on the third one down.
Third page.
Oh, sorry. On the page we're on now, second page. Is that not what we were on?
What's the first? Is
The-
it Fire Pros?
Yep.
Okay.
The replacement library books at 3 million.
Where do you see that?
Third one
Whose
down.
budget?
With Follett.
Do you see that? So that's coming from ESSER, I see. And I guess, so this is just something new that we're doing for the 2023-24 school year. Is that something that we've already done? I see that right now we don't have any money allocated to this
Right.
line
so
item.
that's something new we're planning for next year, knowing that we've got ESSER dollars. One, where we can use the ESSER dollars to be stronger when we come off the backside of it, and using one-time money to update our media centers.
Okay.
So that's not necessarily particularly with books. I'm just recalling, I forgot what school that said that was. It was either Union or another school
you
that
said
did not
Union,
have any
yeah.
books inside their library. And so, like, is this not just technology updating, but our books being added to this actual school
Yes.
library?
This is primarily actual books. Follett is actual books.
Okay.
And on Union, the books were removed during their renovations and
Oh.
restored, and they were not.
So they do have books.
Well, when they came back, they weren't not really in usable format.
Condition.
They got wet and all of that. So we are looking at getting Union
Replacement.
additional
Good.
resources.
It
in
was
there.
alarming to go in there and be
Yes.
like, what? Like, no books for
Yeah,
students?
it's one of those where it got stored. They were not
Huh.
protected from elements, put it that way. So I'm sorry I didn't circle back on that answer. I did get it, so.
Thank you.
And then on that same page, I guess maybe this is a legislative committee question, but I see the McAlvey Merchant and Associates lobbying. So did we actually just spend 33 out of the 48,000? I don't know if
That's
you
a
would.
monthly one.
That's a monthly one.
So we
Okay.
pay them the same, and so that's
Retainer,
where you've
yeah.
got a partial year in there.
Retainer.
Okay.
So.
Gotcha. And looking at Mr. Hendricks, I'll ask you what the impact versus cost would be for our next meeting. Keep that in mind. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. It's like, I feel like I
For
missed
legislative, yeah. Any others you want to touch on? We'll call a vote for it, so make sure you're.
And then back to, sorry, third page, Miller Johnson, the second one down. And you already kind of answered this, but it has to do more with, I also just like to make sure that things are on record too. I don't like to just like, oh, I have the answer. I want everyone to have the answer, right? So we talked about, and this also was on the other purchasing agenda, that is equal employment opportunity and Michigan Department of Civil Rights, Title IX cases. So all that falls under this purchase
It
through
could be either
Miller Johnson.
or we've got Troon down below.
Yep.
We also use Barnum. Barnum does more of our real estate law. So depending on what type of legal questions we need outside counsels for, it will depend on which law firm that we use.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
And they're in retainer. That's why we see them on a
well,
recurring
They probably
monthly.
bill based on
hours.
hourly, I would guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had one question when I looked at this, was the TM, besides the ones that he had, the TM Coaching and Consulting LLC, and it says School Renewal Facilitator.
That's through the Promise Zone, correct?
Promise Neighborhood.
Promise Neighborhood, sorry.
Yeah.
Yep, Promise Neighborhood.
Gets
Grant.
confusing. We have a lot of very similar
A
titles,
lot of,
but
a
that's
lot of
Promise
promises going
Neighborhood.
around, yeah, all right. Yeah, that was a school renewal specialist position.
Okay, how it was worded, I didn't take it as that.
Oh.
So I was like, oh, what is this?
Yeah.
So got it.
Grant funded through the college. Grant, is that right?
School renewal facilitators are through the actual WMU grant for Promise Neighborhood.
Yes, thank you. Yep.
And then right below that, actually, Tompkins Advertising. Do you have an updated number on the actual spending amount for?
I don't
No.
at this point of
Okay.
what we've spent there, but that one is one that I know includes not only the services for the advertising, but it's the actual buying of the time with the television stations and the radio stations and such. So it looks like it's a higher dollar amount, but it's kind of a combined.
So it passes
Purchase.
through to
Yeah.
the media, for purchasing, okay.
And this was just more for a curiosity question, then I'm good, then we can move from my end. I'm good after this one, which is the YMCA of the Greater Grand Rapids. I see that there's an after-school program where we budgeted about almost $1 million for that, and then we're actually under significantly for this. And so is there a reasoning behind why this is, we over budgeted for that? Were we expecting something differently?
We're expecting something differently. Due to staffing shortages or challenges, we've not been able to open all of our loop sites this year. And as a result, actually, our grants will likely be reduced by the state of Michigan. If we haven't had the program open, they're not going to give us the funding for it. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to have all of the programs open next year, and therefore have got the increase as of like we would have all the programs open.
So does this mean for the farthest right column with the 540 for next year, then we wouldn't have all of them open, right? Because then
Well,
we're short another 400
We
something.
had one cohort that is done as of June 30th. We have applied for a new cohort. So they're on the 21st Century Learning Grants, our LOOP program. We've got 4 separate grants that have 4 to 6 buildings in each of the grants.
Okay.
One of those grants ends as of June 30th, 2023. So we've budgeted and planned for the 3 that are continuing. That 4th one, we're in the process of applying for next year, but don't know if we'll receive funding for it.
So if we get
didn't-
that one, then it would increase what we.
So yes,
got.
if we do get funding for the grant, likely this will be one then we would come back in July or August and say we need to increase the blanket for the YMCA or,
That makes sense. I was just curious because I was wondering if we have a decrease in funding for after-school programming for our scholars, then I'm like, okay, that's not okay. Like,
Well, we
what do
need to
we need
find
to
the
be
grant.
doing to be making
Yeah.
sure that they have the resources and tools after school to advance? And so I was slightly concerned about that, but thank you
Yep.
for explaining that.
One more question. That'll be it for me. But it's back on the first page about Dean Transportation. I was a little behind when we were going through that page. But do you know how much we've spent in total for this year for Dean out of the $6 million?
yeah, I don't know right now. I do know that they've been behind in billing us significantly. So that $4 million, like I said, was likely what we had actually paid through
February, you
or
said?
Yeah, February or March. So we've got some significant bills still to come in, because a bill we received in early February might have just been the January bill actually, or the February bill, so.
And we're
depending
still
on-
making them pay us back for some of these other issues, right?
That's one of them that I know Mr. Johnson is having the conversation, so
Okay.
likely what we'll see on one of our last bills is a credit for some of those service issues that we've experienced.
Good.
And so I guess I don't know when the best time to have this conversation is. Now is the best time as any. But talking about just how our agreement with EduStaff is different than our agreement with Dean Transportation, where we can't say, hey, we're going to pay more for bus services for our school district, so we have kind of a edge on the competition, right? To say, oh, well, we need subs, so we're going to pay them more because we want them in our classrooms, but we can't do that with Dean.
No, Dean negotiates with their employees separate from us totally. And my guess is where EduStaff, those subs come into our buildings, it's more of a one-on-one, where Dean, their driver may be on one of our routes. If they're short, we may pull in drivers from another Dean location. So it may not be specific
Yeah,
to
they're not unique to us.
GRPS. It
Yeah.
could be anywhere in the Dean organization of where they're pulling drivers. So to have different rates, I don't know how that would work with their bargaining agreements.
And
I think, and I'll verify this, but I'm fairly certain that transportation is going to be a topic at the next work session, if not that soon. So this would be a good time and a good question to send to President Williams too, to be prepared for ahead of
Okay.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that'll give our district some time to do some work around understanding that better.
I know there was, and I
Yeah.
think if I'm not mistaken, at the community forum, I think also one that came up, just for context for you, Jose, at the community forum where I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I believe that also came up where that was like, there was something that exploring what our options were that were going to be discussed at a later time, if I recall that being stated correctly. So I know it's coming up.
okay, perfect.
Okay, with that, I will ask for a motion to move the approval of blanket purchase orders to the full board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, just one donation today.
Oh, yes.
This one looks familiar.
Well represented
I
today.
didn't know where this came from.
So I was gonna say, hopefully, we did have a donation from Experience Grand Rapids to support some of our graduates from Ottawa Hills that were through the Academy in Hospitality and Tourism. So looking to have your approval on this donation.
Yeah. So do I need to explain what this is?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, sure. So putting on a different hat. This was the GRPS has, before I started as a board member here, as partner with entities here to bring a hospitality and tourism academy for GRPS students. As a result, that is a cohort of students. The pandemic kind of disrupted a little bit of that, what I call juice of the students and their ambitions to do some things. And then we had some staffing issues. However, we wanted to make sure that these students or these scholars that were graduating, that was technically and still is the first graduating class out of this program, that they were graduating with some things that were already geared towards them for quite some months now for this academic school year. So they were able to receive this prior to graduation, which was actually on their graduation day, actually, that morning for the 11 students that were in that program, that were graduated from that program out of the 16, excuse me. And they were able to be gifted with their graduation in partnership with us and a little bit of Grand Valley. So, yeah, I can answer any questions about it if need be.
Well, it's wonderful. Thank you, Experience GR. May I have a motion to move this donation forward to the full board?
So moved.
I'll support that one. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, budget amendment 2.
So I was going to say, continuing on, again, I'm going to go probably quicker than I normally would for a budget amendment. Just in general, our second budget amendment is primarily adjustments to expected spending for this year. So I just clicked right over to the memo, and I'm just going to highlight a couple things. On membership revenue, you'll see a large decrease, but if you remember, our membership and our property taxes all roll into that foundation allowance. So property taxes are expected to be increasing, which brings down the state aid amount. We've also had a little bit of a pupil count adjustment through the audit process. The large item you see on there for section 147A, 147C, 147E, we have multiple categorical revenues on state aid related to our retirement system. And you probably don't remember, but in our first budget amendment, I said there was one that we didn't have information on what that was going to look like. So the state set aside $1 billion to offset the unfunded liability in the retirement system. They were looking for clarification of what that would look like. If there was another way that they could get the $1 billion over to the retirement system without allocating it out to individual districts. The answer became no, it had to go through individual districts. So we received a portion of it, of the revenue side, but at the same time, we also turn around and have to pay it right back to the department or ORS, Office of Retirement Services, within a couple of days of receiving our state aid payment. So it's just a funnel through, but it is a large dollar amount for us. Not unexpected, I just didn't know what the dollar amount was to try to budget for in January, so. So when you come over to the expense side, you'll see larger increases under the salary and benefits, both instruction and support. A large portion of that is the expense side of that retirement adjustment. The other side that's in there, though, slightly offsetting it, is we continue to have a large number of vacancies, which then you'll see a large increase to our substitutes and instructional services line. So those are the biggest adjustments there. Grants, primarily these are just adjustments to expected expenditures through the year. And we're bringing on additional revenue, especially for our ESSER 2 and 3 grants. So that's where you'll see like the $5 million increase under the grant expenditures. Weren't sure how much we would actually get through in fiscal year 23 when we did the First Amendment, but pushing to keep spending on those. So that is general fund in a very, very quick synopsis.
So the net change,
Oh,
Yep.
Yeah, go back up there.
yeah.
Oops, there it is. On the fund balance, that's a good point, Ms. Schottky. So in our Fund balance at June 30, 2022, we were expecting to be at about 20.7 million. Our original adoption, we were essentially a break even with 36,000 add to fund balance. Our decrease to fund balance in Amendment 1 was about $6 million. This one, our increases in revenue are about $1.6 million above our increase in expense. So looking to end fund balance a little better than we thought we would at the first budget amendment. So projecting fund balance at June 30, 2023 to be 16.3 million.
And do you know about what percent that is of our?
Depending on how you calculate it, it's going to be about the 8 to 9%. So
Okay.
still a little below our target of the 10%, give or
Right.
take. But as you've probably heard me say, I budget conservatively. So hopefully as we finalize our actual numbers, it'll actually come in a little bit higher than
Okay,
that.
perfect.
Okay, questions on Amendment 2?
Nope.
All right, may I have a motion, please, to move forward the general fund budget amendment 2 to the full board?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, special revenue fund.
All right, so we'll go quickly to those, and I'll go to the memo on that one as well. A lot of this amendment is, again, adjusting to expected expenditures. We've got a little bit of adjustment into food service. Investment income and some of the sales revenue for primarily the non-GRPS sites, and some catering revenue, and therefore under sales and other revenue when you're under like food service and sales, and most of our kids being community eligible just eat for free because of the grant programs. But those are the increases there. You've got the salary and benefit increases we're adjusting, and a little bit of an increase to the food and merchandise cost. So increasing on food service expense, a little less of an increase on food service expense. The other special revenue, primarily Houseman Field and Grass Program, minor adjustments there.
Is Mr. Johnson with Houseman Field, with that being our primary, I want to say entertainment space, but because that sounds weird to say entertainment space, but our primary
Athletic venue?
venue.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Is some of these dollars that's going there for expenses for maintenance or updates or things? I know you talked about wanting to do some things there. I've been kind of waiting to see if that was going to come forward, and I didn't know at what point it was, or if this is already kind of embedded in some of the Houseman Field things that came up.
Yeah, general maintenance.
That's what I was gonna say. This is more the operational side of Houseman Field,
Yeah.
not the,
No major improvements.
no major improvements.
Okay.
If you come back, if I go back, there's where you'll see Houseman Field. It's more operational that's going through there. And under the non-salaries, that's like the food they spend at the concession, or they sell at the concession
Out there.
stand. It's the electricity, the water, trash pickup and stuff there. So that's where you see the revenues coming in is not offsetting the expenditures that we have, but there's really not, like the track replacement is not there, so.
Got it. Thank you.
May I have a motion to move the budget amendment 2 for the special revenue fund forward to the board?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, debt retirement fund.
And this one's really easy, adjusting our projection of property taxes and investment income. So,
I'll entertain a motion to move forward budget amendment 2 for the debt retirement fund.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. We'll move forward to our reports and discussion items. So first are the April 2023 financial statements.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, just to let you know, revenue and expenses are tracking as we would expect at this point. It still does not reflect Amendment 2 when we do the May financial statements. we'll incorporate Amendment 2, so you'll see some things in the comment sheet where it's, we'll adjust this in Amendment 2. So unless there's questions, I'm just going to kind of go through this part. Okay. Bond construction update. Mr. Smart isn't able to join us today. Hey, Rhonda. That's what I was going to say. We do have Brandon here if we want to bring him forward and he can give us a quick update.
Sure.
I think the project that we've got going on is Innovation Central.
Great.
So.
Welcome.
Welcome and thank you.
Hello.
I am Brandon Morrell. I'm Director of Facilities and Operations for the district. Quick update. So for the Innovation Central, we have Rockford Construction moved into the phase 5 of the construction project just after spring break. That phase is anticipated to be completed by the end of summer. We also have the new electrical switchgear expected to be delivered in May. New electrical services for both the Innovation Central and GR Montessori is planned to be installed over summer break as well. The shoring of the north auditorium wall where we were having that the structural issues was completed, and now we're just waiting for the shop drawings for the new structural steel, and the exterior systems is under review. Demolition will not start on that until the demolition is scheduled to start in July, but that's pending the estimated delivery of the new exterior paneling system. So we won't take anything down until we know exactly when we'll be getting the new panels in place. Construction activities at GR Montessori are planned to start as soon as school is over, so June 12th. That's a tight timeline there, but the scope of work, everything interior should be done by the end of the summer, and the new mechanical equipment will actually be started up, and we're anticipating that start up in September. And then the existing conditions at GR Montessori does not really match our record drawings that we have, so that is one of the challenges that we're finding now. We do not have the full picture of what that problem or what that issue, the challenge, what it could be, but we're still in the early phases of identifying that. At this time, we currently do not anticipate any delay in the completion of the project, but there is just that challenge that we're working through right now. And so, any questions?
Okay. I do not have any.
Okay.
Getting closer.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
No question on the bricks? No.
Multiple times.
Okay, facilities master plan budget draft. All right, this is exciting.
I'm going to ask Mr. Hendricks and Mr. Humboldt to join me.
Wonderful. Welcome,
Now that
gentlemen.
you've been listening to me for so long, I'm going to bring my colleagues up here.
But
and
don't go far, because we may still need you.
I was planning on sitting here and running the clicker for you.
Oh, great.
How's that?
That was planned.
Nice save. Nice save.
That was planned. You too, mind your own business.
That'd have been a workman's comp story. Like,
Oh, dear. All right. Welcome. Ready when you are.
Yes. Good evening. So, as you know, we are going to be talking about going for a bond in November. You all vote on that in July. And the purpose of this part of the presentation is to talk about what we plan to do with the estimated $305 million that will come when this bond passes. So we first kind of want to just do an overview for the benefit of the new board members and the benefit of the public about what bond dollars can use for. And a good rule of thumb is bond money can only be used for things that you can touch and feel, things that are tangible. We're talking about our buildings, to purchase, erect, complete, remodel, equip school, building structures, athletic fields, playgrounds, or other facilities. Putting in new equipment in our buildings, computers, technology, other capital expenditures, and we can also fund the costs of the bond measure and issuance of the bond. The things that the bond cannot be used for are the things that you generally cannot touch with your hands. We're talking about operating systems, application software, and that's unless it is what comes with those computers and the technology when we purchase it. Training, consulting services, salaries, personnel-related funds, those cannot come from the bond. We cannot use bond dollars for operations costs of any kind, so no maintenance costs, nothing of that sort can come from the bond dollars. So we want to talk now about the no new tax rate bond opportunity, and of course John Humboldt from Seaforth is going to be leading that part of our conversation. John, of course, had my role before I did for many years, and we've asked Seaforth and John to head off the communications for our bond. Obviously, John's experience with the district and having worked with passing bonds in the past makes him uniquely qualified to lead us in this work. So John's going to go through kind of the pie and how we're going to divvy it up when this bond passes.
Great. Good to see you all. Thank you for the opportunity. Before I move on, I do want to go back just one more because I want to really hammer home what a bond cannot fund. And operations of any kind means people. So I know one of the biggest issues facing the district and has been facing this district and many other districts across the state is staffing. And so where you'll hear more on July 10th and July 17th as part of the framework and the vision for the reimagined GRPS plan, we start to talk a little bit more about consolidation and closures of schools, where that as a result of that, we will be able to use those staff members across the board to help fill the hundreds of vacancies that exist currently. And when I was here, I think we were topping out around 300, 350, and that number's even higher. So that's part of the overall puzzle of how we reimagine GRPS, is that part of this is going to be how you address the staffing through facilities consolidation and closure, but then you're coupling that with investment in the facilities to make them even more attractive, more competitive, more state-of-the-art. So I just wanted to put an exclamation point on what bond funds cannot be used for, because we also know there's a lot of advocates that are in the community that may just not know this. So we want to continue to reiterate this, and then how the bond is combined with the overall operations plan and some of the other reimagined GRPS plan. So,
and I think, and Rhonda, correct me if I'm wrong, the bond funds, when we use them for those facilities upgrades, that alleviates pressure from the budget in other ways. So you can't use it directly for people, but it certainly helps us fund the entire district when we have buildings that don't need extreme maintenance, renovations, and things like that, that soak up those operation dollars.
So let's talk about this no new tax bond opportunity, because this really is a very limited, kind of once in a lifetime opportunity, because it's tied to two voter approved bonds. One that was approved in 2004, another that was approved in 2015. Those two bonds together have established the current property tax rate of 3.85 mils. So the limited opportunity to pass a no new tax bond to extend the current rate, that 3.85, so the tax rate stays the same as what the taxpayers have been paying by 20 years. That will generate an unprecedented $305 million. That'll be the most amount of money ever approved by voters for Grand Rapids Public Schools, certainly in recent decades that I'm aware of. While we are targeting the November 2023 because we think that makes the most sense for when a typical municipal election would have been held prior to when the charter amendment changed it to the even years, where it's now more associated with partisan ballots in the gubernatorial and the presidential year. But again, so in theory, you would have three cracks. November, the presidential primary, which is still determined to be either February or March, or May. Those are the only three election dates that this question could be put on. We're advocating for November for the reasons we outlined. We think that makes the most sense. So maybe saying it's once in a lifetime, it's maybe thrice in a lifetime, but it is very limited because if this is not put on the ballot and approved by voters, then a part of those tax rates drop off. So if you were to come back and ask for the same amount of money, it would be a tax increase. This is not a new tax and is not a tax rate increase. It is a tax rate that's being paid by property owners currently, so that they would not see an increase in the tax rate. So the proposed no new tax bond program, as I was mentioning earlier, this is really being informed as part of the Reimagine GRPS with Us plan, that vision and that plan framework that we intend to bring to you on July 10th and again for July 17th vote. But it's really important to know how much engagement has gone into this. There's always room for more, but this goes back to the strategic planning process where we did dozens of focus groups, dozens of small group, large group town hall meetings, thousands of individuals participated in surveys. Once that was approved, that then led to the facilities master plan. Facilities master plan went out last fall, did a pretty extensive engagement in a short period of time because at that one point the time frame was much more expedited. As a result of feedback from particularly the new board members that said we need to buy a little bit more time and we need to do more engagement. The Eureka group was hired. Additional time was given between the time when we originally thought you'd vote on this framework to when it will now be in July. And it's being informed by our friends at the Urban Core Collective and others who recently submitted their recommendations. We expect there will be other groups that will do the same, but the beautiful thing about it is they are all very much aligned around common themes, common highlights. And so, but that's also not the end of the process. We know that in July 17th, July 10th, that's when the community will get their first look at what the actual vision and framework is. So there'll still be time to get community feedback, additional feedback, before and even after the November 7th vote, assuming that the board does vote to put it on the November ballot. That engagement will help to further refine the plan. Of course, as you've heard before, a lot will be dependent on what happens on November 7th, if that's when you all put it on the ballot. If it passes, then it will be tightening up even more on the details on what is the final plan, what schools are going to be impacted and targeted for renovation, expansion, new construction, consolidation, closure, and repurposing. So that's when the meat will really kind of come out. If the bond does not pass, that is going to get a little bit tougher because you don't have $305 million fuel injection to go along with the overall plan. So that's just to kind of give a high level of how this entire plan is being developed based on input over technically almost 2 years if you go back to when strategic planning first started. And it will continue to be informed by community, and we'll continue to welcome that input. Next one, some of the key themes for bond investments, and I'm specifying bond because this is more of that capital improvement where we heard scholars, parents, staff members, community said, if we're going to have dollars that can only be spent on facility and capital improvements, including technology and others, these were the things that we heard the most. And this is taking themes from the different feedback, but focusing on the fact our scholars deserve this. Like, this $305 million is the best timing, politically is the best election. You know, when you look at, you ask yourself the question, is this doing right by kids? Is this right by scholars? Do they need it? Do they deserve it? And the answer is absolutely yes. So
This has gone back to them.
what's that?
This in particular, like the key themes for the bond investments that has been displayed somewhere where they are able, or people in general, community can see that these were what kind of came to the cream of the crop.
All the different things have been done transparently. This is the first time we've come before anyone at the board. So this will go out publicly, and this is just the beginning. If anything, this is the sneak peek of what's to come on July 10th and July 17th, because in order to keep in line with that time frame, we needed to make sure that you all got a picture of the budget framework. 'Cause this, you're going to see the budget doesn't get into high-level specifics. It's showing the buckets of how we're trying to prioritize the different funds based on what we heard from the scholars, the teachers, the parents, and others that said this is what we think we need and want for our scholars.
Thank you for that.
Yep. But that 1 point, high quality, optimal, safe, healthy, and healing learning environments. That's ensuring that we've got the most state-of-the-art classrooms with the top technology, with the heating and cooling and all the air quality and the dynamics that go into ensuring that's an optimal, safe, healthy, and healing learning environment. We heard very clearly, get back to the basics, deliver on the basics, and that includes state-of-the-art classrooms, athletic facilities, which we know there's our GRPS Foundation is out doing a capital campaign that's raising some private dollars, but this would help to really fuel inject that and address a lot of those concerns. Fine arts auditoriums, how do we make the facilities more competitive with surrounding districts that have largely have had a few students leave us to go there, so how do we develop if we build it, they will come. Technology, in the last bond in 2015, we had $10 million set aside for that for just technology. That was how many years ago? 8 years ago. So a lot of and even though we sunk a lot of ESSER funds, we have more technology in the district today than ever before, and the replacement rates and the costs for that are, especially with chip prices and inflation right now. So that technology, playgrounds and green space activation, this is where we heard a lot of feedback that our playgrounds and our green space are part of the overall green Grand Rapids master plan. So if we want to have our kids have access to a 10-minute walk to green space throughout the city, particularly in the 3rd Ward where it's the most parkland deficient, and we're one of the largest landowners, that makes the most sense to be investment in our playgrounds and kind of activating some of the green spaces. Safety and security, I think you've heard a lot lately, but that, if you go back to the previous bond, that was not only technology, but that was also doing a more safe and secure entryways, which we've completed most of those buildings, I believe, but that's what we're talking about. And then, of course, food service. If we're gonna strengthen the food service and the quality and the delivery, you also have to have the cafeterias and the kitchens designed to be able to do that. I think it's really important to put with an asterisk that if you think about food service and the investments and then the number of buildings that may be touched by this, $305 million doesn't go as far as it sounds like it might, but it will absolutely be impacted, and the next slide will show a little bit more. But the other part was to use repair criteria to prioritize investments, looking at where the different sides of the city that may have been disproportionately and inequitably impacted. How can we prioritize these investments? And again, you won't see that in this presentation, but you will see more of that on July 10th and July 17th.
One thing, just as we're transitioning to the playgrounds, in the last couple of years, we've done more renovations to playgrounds. As you drive around, you see some newer playgrounds on elementary. But one thing that we've not necessarily been able to do is to make them more accessible. So that would be one that we would want to bring back into how do we make the playgrounds more accessible to everyone, special needs students especially. So, yeah, great.
And so here's kind of the breakdown. Obviously, the educational building construction, that's potential new construction, additions to existing facilities, minor, major renovations to facilities. The orange is the renovation in auditoriums. The gray is athletics, so you'll see if I go through the numbers there overall for educational building construction, $233 million. Renovations for auditoriums, about a little over 12, almost 13 million. Renovations for athletics is also almost 13 million. Technology, we're looking at about 7.3. Playgrounds, 3.8. Safety and security at 5.6. And then consolidation improvements would be around 29.1 million. Now the next slide makes it almost easier, but here and you can maybe get into a little bit of this on the different series, but you can't spend all the money or let all the bonds all in one series. So this work will have to be spread out over a series of 3 different bonds. You'll see the footnote. It's important to note that the education building construction component is where that's inclusive of food service improvements. Typically, when we're going to do a major renovation or a new build, you'll see new kitchen, new cafeteria. So that's where you'll see some of those improvements.
So what is the difference between educational building construction and consolidation improvements?
I think some of that is potentially as part of this, we would be looking to close some non-educational buildings as well. So, but in order to do that, we may need to move things or do something else. It would also include some of the administration type things, the bond issuance costs and those types as well. So it's kind of all even though it's a large dollar amount, it's going to be, different things are included in there, but it's not gonna hit specifically to the educational buildings. It's gonna hit the non-educational buildings strictly for the purpose of consolidating, not that we would want to put a lot of money into a non-educational building.
So,
No, please, I was going to ask.
So my follow-up question with intentionality, this is actually going to stem my second question. The first one is Series 1, if bond goes and gets approved, Series 1 is scheduled to be implemented the start of when?
We would look to issue, depending on market conditions, likely if it passes in November of '23, in March of '24. The second series likely would try to issue in June of '26. And then the last one, it's in '29, but I don't remember the month.
Okay, so I asked that intentionally. I guess, are these numbers were based off of current or projected new pricing based off of our current rates and inflation that's going on? I'm curious because that's going to stem my third question.
Yeah, so the projection to the 305 is off of projected taxable values. The costs included in each of the series also includes a cost escalation, knowing that if we're going to do work in 2027, it's likely going to cost more than what it would cost in 2023. So those cost estimates also have included cost escalation.
Good. My concern about that, if you did not say that, to be frank with you, was I'm thinking about the playgrounds right now. I have to do a lot of work with various different things, and like to even make a playground accessible is costly. And so when I'm thinking about only seeing like around $1 million for that, it just seemed a little undervalued in that regards, or overestimating what that cost will really be. And so it made me question or wonder about like, what do we do? I mean, we can't we're like, oh, I'm so sorry, we can only get this up to stair 3, and you got to figure out how you're gonna get up the rest of that. I don't see us doing that, nor have we done that in previous situations as a district. And so it just made me want to know more about how are we planning for the unexpected when it comes to this, especially around projects, if costs are going to continuously be inflated or as they're projected to continue, to be frank, how is that going to play into what we're allocating funds for?
I say that's one of the things that Plant Moran Cressa is bringing to the table and making sure that we definitely stay aware of what current cost projections are looking and including that into these cost models.
So if this is submitted and something happens and changes, what is the process of, do you guys have to go through all of these budgeting numbers and resubmit that? Or like, what is the?
Oh, and what we get in the bond is ours to figure out how we want
Yeah.
to spend. So just as with Innovation Central is a good example, right? It was the last project in this issuance of this bond, and there were increased costs. We had some other projects in the district plan, but we had to move those funds to be able to manage Innovation Central's. So that's what would happen, is you would have to shift.
Okay,
around.
perfect. Thank
I
you.
would just add that, in 2015, when we did the cost escalation, we built in what was kind of fair
Imagined,
market
yeah, right.
expectations. And then look what happened the last 2 years with
Right.
COVID, with inflationary costs, supply chain. So these are pretty conservative. This is based on trying to look at what are those worst case scenarios as best as you can. But then, just like you amended your general operating fund today, and it shifts a little bit here, a little bit there, or maybe
Stay
a
on
lot
the
bit
curve.
there.
That's right.
You as a board would have the opportunity to be able to make those decisions on where you're shifting those dollars.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, I don't know if you would be able to answer this, or if Plant Moran would. I'd need to have their people come. I guess how do we break down the allocated, amount for all of these categories? I guess what kind of goes into that process? And I know I don't need to get a whole breakdown, but I don't know if you have like a simple understanding that maybe I don't, about how that happens or how the work happens.
I don't know if the three of us are able to answer that one, but I think that's an easy one. We just talked about it. And not sure if you would know that, but I think we can come back to you with it, because they have pretty round numbers of that percentages that they've used to do the cost escalation. So I think let us come back to the board with that answer. You'll have more opportunities on this.
Yeah.
Was that what you were asking, or was it overall just how were the decisions made about the allocations? Of each-
How do we know how to? 'Cause I was
I mean,
thinking about that too.
yeah, just like, I guess, yeah, like what does the district say, hey, we want to spend, 5% of this on athletics, and,
Got it.
or how does that happen?
So a little bit more,
Coming up with the numbers.
Yeah.
a little bit more breakdown for how we kind of did the
The
breakdown
allocation,
by the pie
yes.
chart and the percentages
yeah.
of each. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair.
That's what I was gonna say, in general, that definitely Alex has been working with Plant Moran Cressa on more specifics of the details. I think part of it, they were knowing what John said, what we heard from community engagement and all of that, knowing auditoriums and athletics are priorities. What might that look like? We also know of some current projections of immediate things that we need, whether it's our pools or Houseman Field or some of our other performance field. We've got some current estimates to know what that's, so it's kind of an informed
Yeah.
what this might look like. Auditoriums that may be a little heavier than what we net, but also knowing that maybe one of our auditoriums we bring up from very nice to state of the art, and what that might look like, and that would definitely increase the costs. So just kind of looking at some of those educated guesses of where we are right now and what we know immediate needs are is, I think, how they developed a lot more of the prioritization of what that looks like.
As somebody that had to do a lot of community engagement, I think it would just be important to somehow highlight and how this is going about, like the part of that storytelling. If we want community to come along with us, we got to be able to tell the story with them, even digestible to what they believe is to be received, so they can understand what the dollars are going towards. And I think this kind of, the questions that have come out, and particularly out of myself and Trustee Rodriguez, it just speaks to if someone was in the dark completely, how would they translate this information to know that this is what we're planning on doing, and this is what the best interest in this was, not something that we just pulled from the sky, but people might think that, right? But was intentional about, we took your feedback, we did X, Y, and Z, this is what we heard you say, did we get this right, whatever the case may be. And it just, it literally helps us and them to reimagine with us as we're asking them to pair with us, right?
I mean, there's a
And so
student
gearing that
quote
up.
or a parent quote, I mean, from the different surveys, from the different focus groups, from Eureka Group, we can humanize
Yeah.
this very easily.
I
I
think
mean,
it
this
would
is
need to
kind
be.
of a little bit more,
Yeah.
less human, more budgety.
Yeah, right.
But
It's more of
that's
a
a
finance
great,
committee,
that's a
yes.
great,
Right.
great feedback.
No, yeah, I get it. Listen, I don't not admit to be a nerd at heart. I love it. I embrace my nerdism. However, I do think like the simplification of things, especially when you're talking about for the overall community, has to come into play. And also that it be in multiple languages when that time does come. So this is good to know. I just was curious in regards to like who just came up with these numbers and at what point do we get community feedback, if already, to help with that? Don't know, but it was definitely a question. Just had some flashbacks, some community engagement.
And if anything, they pushed back. I mean, like,
Oh, yes, they do.
We wanted the world. I think the district, and based on everything, was like, we want this, but we want that too, and we want this, and we
Yeah.
need that. And
Yeah.
so this was, I think, their best first attempt to try to rationalize how we can make smart strategic investments based on feedback, but knowing the need, the demand is over almost 500 million, 450 million in deferred maintenance. So, I mean, 305, like I said before, sounds like a lot, but it's
Still in a deficit.
It's
And,
not-
and quite frankly, they're gonna say it's a lot, right? And so
Yep.
like, how do we communicate that what we're asking for, although it is a lot in reality, there's a need that is greater than even this amount. It really helps you to humanize what we're asking for, so that way they can continue to walk and reimagine along with us. My two questions are, one, will we be able to get a copy of this? Because the only thing I had in mind was the pie chart.
I, like, literally, John sent it and
Oh, yeah,
Tasha
yeah.
loaded it just as we were
Before you
starting
arrived,
the meeting,
yes.
so we will get it out there, so you'll get this.
Awesome, thank you.
Presentation as
And then the second question was around when it comes to with this iteration of what we talked about earlier, my initial question was, where was this located? Now that we've seen this, where would someone in the community go see this on a website, and when will it be up? So they can just, those who are maybe more in-depth with the numbers
yeah.
could have a way to look at this ahead of time before it is humanized, in a sense. So where would one find this if they were in the community to see like, oh, I presented on this and we see this now, where is it at for the district?
Yeah, we talked about that actually before this meeting, about putting this on in the news and announcement section and writing out
Awesome.
a full article about this. And of course, we'll be working on, as John terms it, the glossy, that really goes into in-depth, has some of that storytelling you're talking about, where we really lay out. And we've been working with the cabinet, talking specifics about, where some of these dollars will be invested as a result of the impact, the information we've got from the community already.
And when you typically post, does this question is not coming from like this is what I want you to do. This is a question, or like a real question. Will there be opportunities for people to engage, or you get feedback from the posting online, or is it just an informal information informing you post, or is it we're informing you and there's a part for you to engage?
Sure. So there's always, I hope that with all of our communications that we offer a way for the public to speak back to us, whether that's, like we're talking about after we vote in July on doing this bond measure, we will be going out to the community and hosting, and we don't know the specifics on what that's going to look like this year, whether that's town halls, collecting online feedback, all of the above. So yes, that will be included.
So happy to hear that we're going to be engaging. So I said it loud so that way it can echo with whoever's watching this, that we're going to engage. So this is good. Thank you.
As Dr. Roby says, that's not what I'm hoping, that's the expectation.
Got it. And sorry you had to wait, but you'll be okay. You'll be okay. You can wait.
My question wasn't that important. No. Wait, so did you give a date on when that's expected to be? Like, you said it once, okay, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. So to Mr. Eben's point about like simplifying things, whatever I ask, I feel like so many, thousands of other folks might also be wondering. And so I feel like that's also why I ask so many questions, just to get, whoever watches this on, I don't know what camera I'm on YouTube, but, I think I speak for a lot of folks when I say like clarity is always, the best measure. So we all can get it in layman's terms. But for the consolidation improvements, again, I feel like that could be split up in terms of like where the money's going into different categories, to really bring some clarity around that as well, just because it is the second largest allocation there on the list. Just so folks know where that money is going and what it's being used for. I think that would
I saw John making notes. We'll
Yeah,
get more
absolutely.
details on
perfect.
I think this is intended to be very high level.
Right.
Right.
All of this. and
First
We know there are
glance.
questions
Yep.
about quadrants and where the investments
Right.
are going.
Yeah.
All of that's going to be more fleshed out as we go down the line.
Perfect.
But that's great. I mean, it gets the feedback as we're crafting the story, as we're developing the materials. I mean, that's what we're looking for. I mean, it's constant improvement, constant opportunity for engagement, and just being transparent and putting it out as far and wide so people know why we're doing the why and the how and the what it's going to be, all of the above.
Yeah. And, your advocacy is an important part of your engagement because as much as we try to think we are reading this as an outsider or trying to, we are on the inside and know a lot of things. So if there are communications that we're drafting or putting together that aren't clear or that you think people who are not on the inside would have questions about, certainly we want you to bring those forward.
Right. Absolutely. And the more you put out there on whether GRPS website or Facebook or news article, I think most board members on their own pages and personal pages try to share that out. So I'm hoping to get a lot more in the near future so we can just blast it out to everyone. Yeah.
And thank you guys for taking the time to even go through this. This was extremely helpful. So I appreciate the thought and the care that went into this, even the breakdown of that. I think is really good, and people are going to resonate to seeing where these categories were selected for funding to go to, and I think that's going to speak to people. So thank you.
Okay, so remind us, next steps. So this comes back to the full board in July? Is that right?
That's right. The full board at your work session July 10th,
Okay.
and then there'll be the July 17th is when we're
Yeah.
at
We're gonna
least as
vote. Mm-hmm.
currently planned. And part of the rationale behind that is that you'll be voting on the vision and the framework. So you're not finalizing a plan. You're voting on a vision and a framework, and then you're also going to be voting on the ballot language that would put it on the November ballot. And the reason we're, again, asking you to do that in July is you have to do it no later than August 15th. And we'd rather not wait. We'd rather have a clarity as to exactly when you're going, because then the education campaign, this is the campaign that can be done utilizing your resources through GRPS, all your different communication means. It cannot say how to vote. It can't use certain words, but what we can do is educate and inform. And so the sooner that can start happening, especially knowing you have the fog of back to school in August and September, and then absentee ballots are going out third week in September. I mean, so it's a tight time frame. So this earlier we can at least start getting out there. That's where, even if the plan is not fully cooked, that's also telling the voting public and the stakeholders, you still have a say in this. So, this is our framework. This is the vision. This is the proposed budget, but the board still is going to have a chance to vote on this again after the election.
Yeah.
So between now and July is when you're working on the vision and framework
Yep.
aspect of it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, have been and will continue to be. Yep.
We've got Eureka Group who's finishing up her external report. So she did the internal report. At one point, those were staggered to come. One was going to go in April, and then one was in May. We said, hey, we need more time. We need to do it right. So we bounced it another, basically, month, almost 2 months. And so instead, we combined internal, external for that report coming out to you in June. So that's kind of the tail end of engagement that also is making our time frame for squishing and getting this plan done a little bit tighter. But the fundamentals of it are there. We just would like, we not see what her final report looks like.
And what was that date again? I know we heard it from Dr. Lovelady Mitchell at our
Get a report.
at our board work session.
Okay, so it'd be the
No, it's coming up.
June work session on the 12th, June 12th. Does that sound right?
It's on,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what you say, that's your board work session. is the 12th.
I
Maybe
still
June
don't know
this
the
week.
difference between board work sessions and board meetings.
Start time. Yeah. Location.
Extra meetings.
Yes.
Yeah,
Formality.
yeah.
Formality, indeed, yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that concludes this meeting of the Finance Committee. Thank you, everyone who was here, supported the questions and the work. All right, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you. Have a good night.